Hey guys, Dylan here, and welcome to the audio commentary for Katsu Cats. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and here is a making of audio commentary for kind of the general video as a whole. I am going to be doing a time-lapse commentary as well, which is also on this channel, and it contains basically the entire production process recorded and sped up. It has my entire process. You get to see what I'm doing during these 6 weeks of work. Didn't record everything, but I recorded most of everything and at least bits of every single part of the process, except for sound, I believe, which is part of this video. If you guys do want to know more about this project technically, you know, how I did things, how I did the shaders, how I did all the things in Blender and everything like that, go ahead and check out that video. Anyway, let's just jump right into the audio commentary for Katsu Cats. These intruders, dressed like these various objects that may seem foreign to a cat, but to us, we can obviously recognize them. But their immediate response is to get rid of them, and defend himself. And in the outside context, in the real world, that involves pushing things off of his territorial space. So I thought it'd be a cool, fun video to make, and it was extremely fun to make. But yeah, the ideas for the costumes actually came from the original concept. So obviously we could only choose from things that were particularly found on tables of young college students. So one thing that's interesting is that obviously the notebook and the pencil were something that I wanted to do for a while, but the paintbrush actually wasn't originally going to be there, and you'll get to see this in my time-lapse video. The paintbrush was actually going to be the glass cup. The glass cup that you see at the end was going to be at the beginning of the video. And what ended up happening was I just couldn't figure out a way to choreograph the glass cup because he's so limited in movement already. And he's a chibi character, which means that their arms and limbs are much shorter than they should be. So the thing about chibi choreography is that you have to throw out a lot of the traditional choreo moves that you get from realistically proportioned characters. The advantage of having a realistically proportioned character is that you can literally do anything that you can do in real life. But when you have a chibi character, the weight and the center of gravity is totally different. So because their head is so large, their center of gravity is much, much higher, which means that the simplest, most basic of kicks, for example, a side kick or even, a roundhouse or whatever, that doesn't work if you're trying to balance the character. And you can still do it if you really don't mind making it look awkward, which, in a lot of cases, for example, for Minecraft animations, so a lot of people can get away with those kind of kicks because it's Minecraft and people aren't as picky. But for something that's, supposed to seem more fluid and accurate, which is also kind of like my style, I do try to make sure things look very smooth and plausible. I try to avoid those things when the center of gravity is obviously going to make someone topple. So while choreographing for a chibi character, not allowing yourself to do that changes the choreography and you have to get more creative with it. And so after struggling for a little bit in terms of, how to actually show the fighting styles of these cats, which are chibi characters as well, I had to figure out that, and here's the secret, in order to give them enough range in their movements and stuff that would seem interesting in a choreography, I figured out that chibi characters actually more or less require some sort of weapon that would act as an extension of their limbs, which is incredibly necessary when your limbs are, half the size of your head. One of the biggest pet peeves that I have is doing a kick doesn't make any sense for chibi characters. Not just because of the center of gravity and the weight balance issue, but also because their legs are oftentimes have less reach than their arms do. In order for choreography to be engaging and interesting, you have to, make it believable. And when someone opts to kick with a shorter limb, kicks don't have that advantage anymore. So it becomes a case where doing those kicks makes no sense. So ultimately, in order to make chibi characters interesting to watch choreographically, you must give them a weapon. And in this case, I chose the paintbrush. So anyway, now you know why the paintbrush exists. Another reason is because the paintbrush is more of a Japanese thing, for calligraphy and stuff like that. It's not as common in America. But, I did want this to have a kind of a Japanese feel because of Katsu Cats and, the dojo and all the Japanesey things. Yeah, I definitely wanted it to have a Japanese feel. Plus, the toon shaded kind of look reminded me of anime. So anyway, let's keep watching. After I finished that first bit of choreography that you saw, I actually hadn't thought of the crow yet. And when he hit him through the ceiling, I was trying to think of, the next moves, the next steps. I kind of just hit him through the ceiling for fun. And then I was like, wouldn't it be hilarious if, he came back, which, I was planning for him to fall back through the roof and keep fighting, but wouldn't it be hilarious if he had caught a bird on his way back down and used it as a weapon? Because, what's he doing up there? And when he comes back, maybe something unexpected should happen. And that was the first thing I thought of. And from there on, the choreography completely evolved because I did want him to have a weapon. Originally, I was going to have Katsu have a staff as well. And I was going to make the staff, a regular old staff, but it would have a kind of like a sign or something of a paw shape, at the end of it to kind of represent his own paw so that it would make sense when he was knocking things over and stuff like that. But ultimately, I opted out of that just because, there was no time to switch between the crow and the staff. And the crow was just such a more versatile weapon anyway. And we had already seen a staff. So it got to the point where, I figured the original choreo right here, it's really bad. It's the original choreo was rather slow rhythmically and uninteresting to watch. And that was something that I had originally in the animatic, which, animatics are mostly rough anyway. But I'd gone through the trouble of choreographing this part for the animatic already. And after that, I was decently satisfied with it. It wasn't terrible. So I kept it for a while until the very end, literally the first pass. And during that time, I was thinking of a way of how to transition to the staff. But instead of doing that, I decided to change the bird into a gun, and that would be the finale. And I couldn't think of a better way to do it. And it was really fun to do, using the bird as a gun. And originally I was going to have him run out of bullets because that makes a lot of sense, right? Birds can't just poop forever unless you think they can, which could also be a political statement, but on birds. But what I was going to do was I was going to have him at the very end, have a face off with the paintbrush and then throw the bird at the paintbrush as a last resort, but then the bird just flies away. So that was the original joke. I couldn't fit that in there, and instead I went with the bird gun never runs out, and at the end he flies away in a more kind of aftermath moment, which I thought was also very funny. So it all worked out, but yeah, it wasn't originally going to be there, and I was going to have him switch to the staff, but then the amount of layering that is necessary for sound design or sound mixing, whichever is the correct term, I'm not entirely sure. But ultimately, when you do sound, you need to take into account every single sound. A lot of people will go through and they'll be like, oh, they're stepping here and they're going to clank. Oh, just add a clank noise. But in every single movement, there's much, much more than just one thing happening. And I think those sounds need to reflect what those movements are doing. And so let's say, for example, someone lands on the ground. You need to have the footsteps there. And then, depending on the material that they're landing on, you need to have maybe a little bit of crashy material. For example, if the wood is like breaking underneath them, even if you don't see the wood breaking, adding that sound as a more dramatic effect for how heavy they land. And then you need to add the cloth moving on their body. In fact, cloth flaps are very, very important for any kind of movement. In fact, I put cloth flaps in here everywhere. The cats aren't wearing any clothing. They're not wearing any loose garments. And yet the cloth flaps make it seem so much more real every time they move because, quite frankly, we expect that as human beings. We expect to be able to hear someone moving from the clothes that they're wearing. And, I think ultimately it gave more substance to the movements that the cats made. So remember, always take into account every single thing that happens in the scene. That includes any kind of movement. In fact, I believe that, if something is happening on the screen at all, there needs to be some sort of sound. And if there isn't anything happening on the screen, there needs to be some sort of background ambient sound, which is also what I added. Whenever the meow that you hear, Kelly did a great job with the meows and the crows' caws or whatever. And the meow that you hear is not the original meow that I was going to use. I was going to use some other one that kind of sounded more like meow, like ow, like I just got pooped on. And then showing it to Kelly, and it's like, oh, what do you think about this one? She's like, oh, maybe try a different meow. And so I moved it over in time because we did a series of meows on the same audio file. And so then the next one over was literally the one that we just heard, and it's just meow. It's like very sing-song, completely out of place. But the moment we heard it, we cracked up, and so we were like, we have to use this in the video, and so we did. And I had a lot of fun with it, and Kelly had a lot of fun with it. I had her recording the screams multiple times. We had to re-record it after a while just to get the audio quality good. And it was a lot of fun. It was just like yelling into the microphone with a large meow. And by the way, something that really works for doing any kind of voiceovers like this is changing the pitch a little bit. Kelly's natural pitch is not this high. I pitched it up a little bit to make it sound more like a cat. and more ridiculously funny. Especially for the glass cup one. And then for the crow, I pitched it down just a little bit to make it sound more raspy and husky. She did a very great job with both of those, even without that. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Another thing that's interesting about this scene is that, in case you didn't notice, for the sound, the glass cup's cat scream is actually muffled. And I did that on purpose so that it would kind of represent the fact that he was screaming through a glass cup, so you wouldn't be able to hear him as well. I think that came across nicely, especially like juxtapositioning the different sounds together. They were going between the notebook, the pencil, and the paintbrush, and then the two highlighters, which you may or may not have noticed, are actually in the scene right before this with the glass cup, as well as that green pencil that you see on that table right there. This cat is actually a different rig than Katsu's actual fighting rig. My nicknames for them are Katsu Cat and Katsu Man. So Katsu Man is the one that's, more of a humanoid here, and Katsu Cat is this one. And Katsu Cat I actually made first, and then created Katsu Man out of this. Basically fried pork cutlet, and a lot of the times it looks exactly like that costume does. If you guys want to see Katsu Cat, go ahead and check out my time-lapse video, and you'll get to see him running in his little stubby, cute little edible costume. But yeah, that's about it. I hope you guys liked the video. I hope you guys liked this audio commentary. If there's anything you guys want me to talk about next time in the audio commentary, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll make sure that I include that. Yeah, until then, I guess I will talk to you guys later. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.